Alright, so here is my update on Matthew Perry. Because things just got very interesting. People have been arrested in coordination with his death, which initially was considered accidental. Now people have been charged. So, things are getting very, very interesting. So, Matthew Perry's assistant among 5 people, including 2 doctors, charged in his death. So, 5 people, including his personal assistant and 2 doctors, have been charged, in what prosecutors called a broad underground criminal network, dedicated to getting the Friends star the powerful surgical anesthetic that killed him. Okay. The doctors preyed on Perry's history of addiction in the final months of his life last year to provide him with ketamine in amounts they knew were dangerous, U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada said as he announced the charges Thursday. Which, fair, if they're charging doctors, you would think that doctors would know what amounts would be considered dangerous, so okay. They knew what they were doing was wrong, Estrada said. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyway. One doctor even wrote in a text message, "I wonder how much this moron will pay. And let's find out," according to indictment unsealed Thursday. Not only should he go to jail, but I hope that whatever medical board certified his license takes it away. Because just that one sentence should be enough to get him to lose his license. I mean, what the hell? You are a doctor. You are not supposed to just give people medications at exorbitant prices simply because you want to see how much the moron will pay. What the hell? Perry died in October due to a ketamine overdose, and prosecutors said he received several injections on the day he died from his live-in personal assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, who found Perry dead later that day and was the first to talk to investigators. Oh boy. Ketamine has seen a huge surge in use in recent years as a treatment for depression, anxiety, and pain. While the drug isn't approved for those conditions, doctors are free to prescribe the drugs for so-called off-label uses. Which is true, like you hear about Wegovy and all the unintended benefits that come with it. And so doctors are now prescribing for that, even before the FDA said, yeah, you can use it for that. So the fact that they use it for off-label uses isn't necessarily bad. It's when it's abused that it's bad. Because, sometimes doctors realize that a certain drug helps for certain conditions in a certain patient, because we're all individual. It's, like I said, if you're doing it under the guise of let's suck this person dry and like we're leeches, yeah, that's entirely different. Now, what I'd like to know is, did the personal assistant know what the hell he was doing? Because the doctors obviously should have, but the personal assistant? I don't know if I don't have enough information so far, but should he really be a part of it? I mean, yes, he was giving the injections, but if nobody told him that this was a bad idea, if he was just doing what Matthew Perry wanted, I realize that, I'm just following orders can be a slippery slope. But at the same time, if the person who's telling you to do this is the victim, I don't know. But let's keep going. Perry had been receiving regular ketamine infusion treatments for depression in amounts not nearly enough to account for his death, from his regular doctors who were not among those charged, authorities said. Okay. So, was he getting more ketamine infusions from these other doctors who had no scruples? When those doctors refused to give him more, he went in desperation to others. And that is a problem that a lot of doctors face. People will paint all doctors with a broad brush about how horrible they are because they did this, that, and the other thing. When, number one, patients sometimes beg, and sometimes you're just like, okay, fine, just go away. But also in this situation where you go to doctors who have absolutely no scruples, I mean, it's entirely possible they didn't know about what his regular doctors were doing, and so they were double dosing him. Like, I believe that's what happened with Heath Ledger, that he just kept bouncing around to doctors and nobody knew what the other doctor was doing. So they were unaware that they were giving him too much. So it could be something like that, but let's keep going. But considering one of the doctors said, let's see how much we can get out of this moron, I'm going to say, no, they just don't have scruples. We're not talking about legitimate ketamine treatment, Estrada said. We're talking about two doctors who abused the trust they had, abused their licenses to put another person's life at risk. DEA Administrator Ann Milgram said in one instance the actor paid $2,000 for a vial of ketamine that cost one of the physicians about $12. Perry said Perry paid the doctors about $55,000 in cash in the 2 months before his death, Estrada said. Now, just as an aside, obviously what they did to Matthew Perry was douchey. But look at what pharmaceutical companies are doing to people every day. I mean, it was just announced that Medicare is lowering the prices of certain drugs because pharmaceutical companies who, it takes them a couple of bucks to make a certain drugs will charge 100 times that to consumers who this is a life-saving drug. And simply because they know that the person has no choice because it's a life-saving drug, they're bleeding them dry. So it's not like it's just these two doctors who are doing that. Pharmaceutical companies have been doing that for a while. So, two of the people, including one of the doctors charged, were arrested Thursday, Estrada said. Two of the defendants, including Iwamasa, have pleaded guilty to charges already, and a third person has agreed to plead guilty. Well then, if the personal assistant has pled guilty, then he wasn't as innocent as I initially gave him credit for. He knew exactly what the hell he was doing. Which means that he's scum. I mean, the two doctors are scum. This guy is scum. And let's see. So we have the two doctors. We have Iwasawa. We're missing two people. Because I believe I said 5 people have been charged. So, yeah. A third one has already agreed to plead guilty. Two of the defendants, including Iwamsawa, pled guilty to charges. And a third person has agreed to plead guilty. We don't know who that third person is. And only one of the doctors was arrested. So, What's going on with the others? Multiple messages left seeking comment from lawyers or offices from all the defendants have not yet been returned. Yeah, that's not surprising. Among those arrested Thursday are Dr. Salvatore Plasencia. I'm so very, very tempted to make fun of that name, but I will refrain. Who is charged with 7 counts of distribution of ketamine and also 2 charges related to allegations he falsified records after Perry's death. Oh, he's a real piece of work. Maybe I am going to make the joke. Yeah, I'm going to call him Placenta from now on. The other person arrested Thursday is Jasmine Sangha, who prosecutors described as a drug dealer known to customers as the Ketamine Queen. Ketamine supplied by Sangha caused Perry's death, authorities said. All right. Sangha and, I'm going to just say Placenta, could make their first court appearances later Thursday. Placenta could get up to 120 years in prison if convicted, prosecutors said, and Sangha could get life in prison. I just find that hilarious. 120 years in prison if convicted, but the other person's getting life in prison. I'm sorry. The person who holds the record for person who's lived the longest was only 120 years. And that was when that person died, they were 120. 120 years is definitely life. I mean, are they suggesting that Sangha doesn't get parole and this other douche does? Seriously, why the distinction? Records show Placenta's medical license has been in good standing with no records of complaints, though it is set to expire in October. Oh, so they're not going to have to revoke his license, they just won't renew it. Because he'll be in jail by then, I hope. Because what the hell? A San Diego physician, Dr. Mark Chavez, has agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to distribute ketamine. Prosecutors allege Chavez funneled ketamine to Placenta, securing some of the drug from a wholesale distributor through a fraudulent prescription. Oh, the hits just keep coming. The prosecutor said the defendants exchanged messages soon after Perry's death referencing ketamine as the cause of death. Estrada said they deleted messages and falsified medical records in an attempt to cover up their involvement. I mean, I'm sure that they weren't actually expecting Matthew Perry to die, and probably when they did, they're like, oh shit, let's cover this up. But, you know, what you expect from people who were like, hey, let's be assholes and bilk this guy for as much money as we can. So yeah, definitely the fact that they didn't see this potential death happening shows that they're complete morons. Not Matthew Perry, they are. Because Matthew Perry had a drug problem. If you are addicted, you are no longer in control. It is very hard to kick the habit. And it's very easy to fall off the wagon. So, who's the idiot here? He's definitely an asshole. Los Angeles police said in May that they were working with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service with a probe into why the 54-year-old had so much of the surgical anesthetic in his system. And I just find it absolutely hilarious when either we hear of the U.S. Postal Service or the IRS taking down criminals. I just find it, actually I find it even more amusing with the U.S. Postal Service, because you wouldn't think that they would be a part of this. I mean, that they would help, obviously, but yeah. Because, it was obviously through the mail. Iwamasa found the actor face down in his hot tub on October 28th, and paramedics who were called immediately declared him dead. The assistant received the ketamine from Eric Fleming, who has pleaded guilty to obtaining the drug from Sangha and delivering them to Iwamasa. In all, he delivered 50 vials of ketamine for Perry's use, including 25 handed over 4 days before the actor's death. So I think we now account for all 5 people. Perry's autopsy, released in December, found that the amount of ketamine in his blood was in the range used for general anesthesia during surgery. But it had been 1.5 weeks since his previous legitimate treatment, the medical examiner said, and the drug is typically metabolized in a matter of hours. Estrada said that Placenta had witnessed Perry freeze up and saw his blood pressure spike after injecting him with the drug, but he's still left with several vials with Iwamura for the actor to inject later. The medical examiner listed ketamine as a primary cause of death, which was ruled an accident with no foul play suspected. And that's where I thought it ended, but drowning and other medical issues were contributing factors, the coroner said. Perry had years of struggles with addiction dating back to his time on Friends, when he became one of the biggest television stars of his generation as Chandler Bing alongside Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Lisa Kudrow, Matt LeBlanc, and David Schwimmer for 10 seasons from 1994 to 2004 on NBC's mega hit sitcom. Drug-related celebrity deaths have, in other cases, led authorities to prosecute the people who supplied them. After rapper Mac Miller died from an overdose, very nice to completely skip a space there, from an overdose of cocaine, alcohol, and counterfeit oxycodone that contained fentanyl, 2 of the men who provided him with the fentanyl were convicted of distributing the drug. One of was sentenced to more than 17 years in federal prison, the others to 10 years. Okay. And after Michael Jackson died in 2009 from a lethal dose of propofol, a drug intended for use only during surgery and other medical procedures, not for the insomnia that the singer sought it out for, his doctor, Conrad Murray, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011. Murray has maintained his innocence. Dude, you were supplying a drug that wasn't used for whatever Michael Jackson was using it for. Now, if you're claiming that it helped, then the FDA has to look into it to see if that's a legitimate use. But, yeah. That's iffy. Because, again, it's one thing to use it for off-label use, but if you're giving so much of it that the patient dies, it being off-label isn't the worst part, but you should be supervising how much is in the system. Because last I checked, the point is to, keep the patient alive. And if they're whining that they want more drugs, hold firm, just like the 2 doctors of Matthew Perry. And they're not the ones who are getting into trouble. It's the other doctors who decided to screw him over. Because they didn't care if he lived or died. They just cared about making money. So that is all I have for this article. I do for those who are curious why I'm doing an article on Matthew Perry, this is an update article. This is an update video because someone at the time of Matthew Perry's death, one of my followers asked me to do a video on Matthew Perry's death. And so I figured I might as well do an update on what's happening because that took a turn. I didn't even know they were investigating it. I knew that the last I heard was that it was accidental. So I thought that's where it stopped. Obviously, that is not what happened. So I think with that, we can finally close the chapter on Matthew Perry. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.